Hello everyone and welcome to my channel called Demon Story Time. Thank you so much for coming, for your likes, for your shares, for your subscription, for your donations. All information for donation you can find down below in comment. Today we keep reading Grimm's fairy tales and our story is called The Iron Stove. In the days when wishing was still of some use, a king's son was enchanted by an old witch and shut up in an iron stew in a forest. Many years went by, and no one came along to break the spell to set him free. Then, at long last, a princess came wandering by. She was most alarmed to hear a voice crying from inside the stew. "Help, please, help me," it said. Bravely she went closer. "Who are you?" the voice asked her. "I am a princess," the young woman explained, "but I have got lost in this forest and can't find my way back home." "I am an enchanted prince," the voice from inside the stew replied. "I'll tell you how to get home if you promise to do what I ask to break the spell and set me free." "Of course I will," promised the princess. So the prince told the princess that she needed to come back with a knife and scrape a hole in the iron. Then he gave her directions. To get back to her kingdom, and she ran off through the trees. When the princess finally returned to her castle, her father, the king, rejoiced. His wife had died long ago, and the princess was his only child. He had thought he had lost her as well. "I would never have found my way home at all," the princess explained, "if I hadn't come across an enchanted prince in an iron stew. I have given my word that I will go back and set him free." The king was very fearful that something else might happen to his dear daughter if she returned to the wood. But the princess insisted. "I must keep my word," she said, and she put a knife into her pocket and set off into the forest. When she found the iron stew once more, she began scraping, and straightway the tiny hole appeared. After 2 hours, she had made a gap so big she could peep right inside and find herself looking at a very handsome young man. She scrubbed faster, and finally the hole was so large that the prince was at last able to climb out. "I thank you with all my heart," he said, falling to his knees. And here's the princess. And what? And asking the princess to marry him. Come on. She was delighted and said yes. But before traveling with him to live in his kingdom, she asked if she could be allowed to go and say goodbye to her father. "Very well," agreed the prince, "but be warned, you must not speak more than 3 words." "What?" The princess thought this was rather strange, but she guessed the prince promised she would remember and hurried back home to her father. Of course, she forgot her promise. She spoke far more than 3 words when telling her father all about the handsome prince and how she had agreed to marry him and go to his kingdom. As she talked, a magic wind blew through the forest and whipped every memory of her from her beloved prince's head. Then it swept him off his feet and carried him back to his own kingdom. Next day, when the princess returned to the forest, her sweetheart was nowhere to be found. She searched for days, growing more and more exhausted and hungry, but there was no sign of him. Finally, the princess stumbled across a little cottage, overgrown with grass and moss. She peeped inside a window and saw several toads sitting at a table eating a fine dinner. She knocked at the door, and smallest toad opened it and invited her to sit and eat with them. The princess told the kind creatures everything that had happened, and to her delight, the biggest toad said they could help her. Then they presented her with a nut, which they told her to take great care of and open when she needed help, and took her to the path through the forest, which led to the prince's castle. Here they're partying. Having dinner, I guess. The brave princess had to cross a high glass mountain, a field that grew plants as sharp as swords, and a lake as wide as the sea. But finally she reached her sweetheart's castle. However, by now her clothes were ragged and tattered, and she looked quite unlike the princess she really was. How would she ever be allowed to enter the court and see the prince? She sank down against the castle wall and sobbed. Suddenly the princess felt something small and hard in her pocket and pulled out the nut. She cracked it with her teeth and opened it, and inside was the most beautiful dress, edged in fine lace and pearls. Wow, how lovely. Overjoyed, the princess put it on. Of course, it fitted perfectly and knocked at the castle door. When the servants saw how fine she looked, they welcomed her in at once. As soon as the prince laid his eyes on her, he remembered her and leaped up and kissed her. Oh, how lovely. Here's the princess and the dress. Yeah. From that day on, the two were never parted. They even sent for the princess's father, the old king, so he would not have to live on his own. and together they all lived happily for many years. Yay! Happily ever after. I love it. Thank you so much, my dear. See you next time. Bye. Switch off.